Chris O'Connor here. Join the Curmudgeon Rock Report's invite-only curmudgeonly community at facebook.com/curmudgeonrock. Also look out for a Spotify playlist that pays honor to this episode.
This is the Curmudgeon Rock Report, and this is your podcast made by rock geek iconoclastic outsiders for rock geek iconoclastic outsiders. For those of you who lament that rock music has gone the way of jazz and slipped into niche genre status, we are here to keep that flame alive by providing insight, analysis, recommendations, and honest takes, not hot takes. And hey, there's a good chance you'll learn some rock history you never knew before. As everyone knows, Oasis have reunited for a worldwide stadium tour. It's probably the biggest tour of the year, and to commemorate this momentous event, the Curmudgeon Rock Report is going to embark on a 5-part series chronicling the musical movement that birthed Oasis. Britpop was a brief but very impactful and influential rock music movement in the 1990s that re-established Great Britain as the purveyors of some of the best pop music in the world. On the surface, it was a reaction to the Seattle grunge movement at the time and most of the US alternative rock that followed. On a deeper level, it was a rejection of American cultural imperialism, especially in music, but in pop culture in general. Several of the bands and artists that emerged from this movement went on to produce some of the greatest and most indelible music of the 20th century in the form of some of the greatest singles and albums of all time. Pure Britpop acts like Oasis, Blur, Elastica, and Pulp will be covered, but more interestingly, we're also going to delve into what we call Britpop adjacent bands and artists. That is, bands and artists that weren't necessarily Britpop in aesthetic or musical style, but whose work is vital to the canon of British rock in the 1990s, such as Radiohead, PJ Harvey, and The Verve. And let's be honest, the music of those latter artists and bands really does fit rather seamlessly alongside the music of those former bands and artists if you put them together in a playlist. So join us as we salute the wonderful rock music Old Blighty gave us in the 1990s as we begin a Britpop Timeline Part 1. And welcome to the Curmudgeon Rock Report.
Arturo Andrade, what's going on, brother?
Good, Chris O'Connor. Yes, I'm here in Gwangju, lamenting the fact that we're kicking off our Britpop series in honor of Oasis and their reunion tour, their worldwide reunion tour, and I'm kind of lamenting the fact that nobody wanted to go with me to get tickets to see Oasis when they come to South Korea later in the fall.
Oh man, you should go by yourself. Fuck them.
That's not fun going by myself. That sucks.
Yeah,
I go with at least 2 people.
It's okay. You could probably score some. You probably get drunk with strangers. Yeah, why not?
Do sing along with them when I'm drunk. But no, I wanted to go with at least 2 people. Nobody wanted to go with me to see Oasis in October. They're coming in October, by the way.
Yeah, you need friends with better taste.
Or just with more free time and more money.
Yeah, or more availability anyway, Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like being this age and like finding people to do stuff with. Everybody's in relationships. Everybody's busy. It's hard to have friends when you're 50 years old.
Hard to have a life when you're 50.
Yeah, that's true. And well, especially in America, because now I was talking to my wife. We went to a minor league baseball game last week, and it was like the total cost was like $120 between the tickets, the tickets, the parking, the food, and all that, just to go to a AAA baseball game, which used to be the cheapest thing in the world. It used to be like $5 back in the 90s. You could get a ticket for like $7, and the beers were $3, and just everything else. And now it's like. Yeah, even going to the fucking zoo costs you like $30 to get into the zoo. To go look at animals throw shit at each other costs you $30 a pop. And so I'm just like,
the cost of living is just ridiculous,
Yeah, I know. It's like my wife and I, we make a combined $150,000. We need to make a combined $300,000 to live like we did 35 years ago. Yeah, down with Trump, down with the government, down with all the proletariat, or not, no, not down with the proletariats. We are
Down
the
with the oligarchs.
proletariats.
Down
Yeah,
with the oligarchs.
down with the oligarchs, down with Jeff Bezos, down with Elon Musk,
Yeah.
down with Mark Zuckerberg, but
Right.
hey, but we're the people's podcast and we're here fighting for you,
Yeah.
the broke ass motherfuckers that still cling to rock and roll, like it's still a predominant thing. Speaking of which, it is still a predominant thing in another place we like to visit, isn't it, Art?
Yes, it is. And I hear that noise. That means we're entering into that other world right now.
Yes, we are. Welcome, folks, to the parallel universe. It's a glorious place where rock and roll posters are still on the walls and black lights still light your rooms, and you still light your lighters at arena shows where Bon Jovi is still like number one, and
Well, no, let's not go that far.
yeah, okay. Metallica. Metallica's still number one. Metallica's a young band. Metallica never aged and never sold out in the parallel universe. And, like I said, it's still on the billboards. It's still on the cover of Rolling Stones. Everybody adores rock and roll. Everybody's like, hey, my, rock and roll will never die. And that's what happens over here in the parallel universe. That's a fancy way of saying that it's over here that we celebrate new and newish albums and newest new artists from folks we think that you would dig. We like to stay current here on the Curmudgeon Rock Report, and this is our way of doing it by joining this parallel universe. And so each of us cover an album or sometimes a single by a new artist, and we want you to embrace these artists. And with that said, Art, who are you covering in this edition of the parallel universe?
Yes, it's the new album by, well, not new. It's the latest album. This actually came out last year, but I only got around to it just recently. It's the new album, the latest album by British band Bob Vylan called Humble as the Sun. British rap punk duo Bob Vylan put out what ended up being one of my favorite albums of 2022 with their debut album, Bob Vylan Presents the Price of Life. It was as if the UK had finally produced their answer to Rage Against the Machine, with Bob Vylan's lyrics addressing socioeconomic disparity, systemic racism, and the evils of oligarchy, bound to hardcore rapping, occasionally gritty hip-hop beats, and mostly pounding, punishing punk rock fury. For their follow-up album released last year, Humble as the Sun, the duo ratchet up the hip-hop element in their sound to the point that for half of the album, you can be mistaken for thinking this is a straight-up hip-hop group, and a damn good one at that. The track Rain, Reign, gallops along with a monster-sized techno club-worthy beat before settling into a sizzling trap beat with frontman rapper Bobby Vylan, Bobby with a Y, spitting fire about the rising cost of living throughout the developed world, as we just talked about. Bobby Vylan's class-centric lyrics reach a higher pitch with Dream Big, where he brutally attacks the way the middle and working classes are brainwashed into believing they can all have a slice of the billionaire pie, all to a perfectly realized hybrid of metal guitars and sleek drum rhythms, courtesy of Bobby Vylan, Bobby with an IE, approximating the intensity of an EDM dance beat. The sarcasm is sometimes laid down a little too thick, as in the track Hunger Games, where Bobby Vylan, Bobby with a Y, otherwise rightly accuses the aristocratic oligarch class of how they get off on the suffering of poor people in various ways. But for the most part, the album delivers on its political consciousness set to intense rap rock, or rap punk, which is more accurate. Right Here is downright funky, while Ring the Alarm grooves along like the Prodigy if they went full-on hip-hop. Overall, it isn't quite as consistent as their excellent debut, but it's still a welcome addition to a music landscape where dissidents and genuine articulate socio-political protests are increasingly hard to find. A solid 3.5 out of 5 stars. Chris?
Yeah, this album is really, really good. And like you said, it's poppier than The Price of Life. Actually, it's like a punk record, and it's got hip hop elements to it. but there's some more melodic stuff on there, and Bobby Villain, and
Yeah.
actually here's something to really just kind of distinguish. So you've got two guys in this group: Bobby Villain, Bobby Villain, and Bobby Villain, Bobbie Villain, and but it's really Bobby with a Y's group,
Yeah.
and he does most of the stuff. He actually plays half the drums. He plays most of the guitar and the bass. He writes the lyrics. It's basically his band. And Bobby
Yeah.
with an IE is kind of a touring drummer. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
play on this record.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of guest drummers, and there's drum programming that fills the rest of it. But it all slaps.
Yeah.
These guys do rock, and
Yeah.
and you also have to love any band, by the way, that they got their visas denied for a U.S. tour this summer because they played Glastonbury and they
Yeah.
got the whole crowd to chant "Death to the IDF." Yeah, and so by going anti-Israel, full blown anti-Israel, they pissed
Yeah.
off the Trumpies and they lost their visas, so they couldn't tour the U.S. So they're doing the punk rock thing in pure punk rock style. Yeah, the Price of Life was interesting because it was like the British revival of Dead Prez. You remember
Yeah.
Dead Prez from 25
Yeah.
years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys have kind of a similar hippie. They're like hippie Jamaican immigrant vibe to them. So like a lot of good stuff. Hunger Games is probably my favorite song on the record. Be honest with you, because of its sense of humor and playing off that concept of spinning the wheel and making a deal for your groceries.
Yeah.
And here let's get off on letting the poor people fight for their food.
Right.
And so it actually works really, really
Which
well.
is kind of like the running theme of that Korean show, Squid Game, by the way, if any of you are.
Which is the first season of Squid Game is fantastic.
I like the whole thing. I think the next two seasons were great too.
Yeah, I have to catch up on. I haven't seen the last two seasons, but the first season, like the pilot where they're all playing Duck Duck Goose
Yeah.
and getting shot. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean that's just classic. But these guys kind of embody that kind of rebel spirit, and
Right.
more power to them. Curious to see what they do in the future to see if they get even poppier.
Yeah.
Because again, some of these songs they rock and they slap, but it's more sung than rap in
Yeah.
some spots, and it's done very, very well. So there you go. And so moving on to my recommendation, this is from a band called Sault and their album 10. Sault is a British R&B collective fronted by the husband and wife duo of producer Inflo, spelled Inflo, and singer-songwriter Cleo Soul. Together, Inflo, Cleo Soul, and their Sault mates make the most consistently engaging and thrilling revivalist soul and funk on the planet, and have been doing so since 2019. The group's latest album, 10, was released this past April and is their most throwback heavy effort yet, swiveling as it does between the light pre-disco funk of 1974 and the post-disco soul of 1982, and faithfully capturing the vibes of both eras in the process, sometimes even in the same song. It's a neat, textured feat of production magic from Inflo especially. He's one of the few musicians these days capable of infusing a modern hip-hop edge into this kind of revivalist black music. The songs here on 10 are consistently crisp and groove-tastic as a result. Highlights include RL, which hits us in the soul with a throbbing bass line, punchy horns, and gorgeous vocals from Cleo Soul. KTYWS, a swaying, reverby, up-tempo R&B nugget that feels like it wouldn't be out of place on Michael Jackson's Thriller, which is kind of weird. There's the lurking, slow-burning ILTS, a lounge-worthy banger driven forth by a cool horn arrangement and lovely harmony vocals, and WAL, the album's most disco-ish song, which is thrust forth by swirling congas, cowbell, and cymbals as Cleo Soul and her backup singers croon about taking a chance on this thing we call life and discovering the power of spirituality. It's all pretty hippy-dippy, man. It all makes for an ultra-fun, ultra-cool party mix, something that Sault does better than any band of its kind in the world. Here's a solid 3 3/4 thumper, Arturo. What do you say?
Yeah, I agree. I like this record. I think yeah, you're right. I agree that it's their most orthodox, old school R&B soul record yet, because their previous stuff always mixed in other elements.
Yeah, like house
1970s
music.
Afrobeat, house, early 90s house music, 1990s neo soul, a little bit of synth pop here, a little bit of this, that, right? This is straight up, to me, this sounds a lot like, and I told you this before, this is like pre-disco Earth, Wind, and Fire. A
Yep.
lot of it reminds me of that. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. Hmm.
Early Earth, Wind, and Fire is really good. You should all check it out,
Yeah. Oh,
people who are
very good.
listening.
Yeah, like
So
earlier Earth, Wind and Fire, and for some strange reason, Michael Jackson's Thriller.
yeah, I don't hear Michael Jackson in this that much, but I
Yeah.
definitely hear more 1970s than anything else. But here's the thing though, unlike say Duran Jones, Inflow and the Salt group, what they do, whatever they do, yeah, it's retro revive. This album particularly is retro revival R&B soul, but it has a modern feel, it has a modern production. The sound is modern because it's
Yeah.
produced like what you said with a hip hop edge, even though it's nowhere
Yeah.
near hip hop
Yeah,
at
no, I
all.
know it's
But
not
it
it's
has
not
a
hip
hip
hop
hop
in the
edge,
least, but it has that edge and
right?
it's modern production. Like Durant Jones and the Indications, which I covered a few episodes back. They're going for a 1971 album that sounds like a 1971 album.
It's all throwback. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all throwback. Whereas here you get throwback songs, but done with a crispness and kind of a digital fervor that like ILTS, for example, that song, which is really really cool. It wouldn't be out of place on a grime hip hop rappers in their
As
hands.
as the beat to a hip hop artist's song. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right. Right.
it could double as the beat to a grime artist's
Yeah.
track.
Right.
So really really strong. Chris here again. We usually end our episodes by inviting you to join our Curmudgeonly community page on Facebook. Well, we're picking up our efforts there. Know people just as passionate as us about rock and roll? Invite them to join in the fun. You don't actually need our permission to do so. Also, expect to see a lot more content up there moving forward. Our mission is to engage you, so darn it, we'll engage you like a fire hose. Or maybe like a firehouse, if we're going to give love to Gene Simmons. We may also be making a few offers. Want to wear a t-shirt featuring our logo? You may have that opportunity soon. So be a fellow curmudgeon, help us expand our little community, and share your own musings via your own posts. We're at facebook.com/groups/curmudgeonrock.
All right, folks. To understand why Britpop became so big in the 1990s, context is required. And that context comes in the form of understanding where British music, and British rock music in particular, was at the beginning of the decade. The two dominant subgenres of native British rock during this time were EDM-influenced indie dance rock, as popularized by Manchester bands such as the Happy Mondays and the Stone Roses, and woozy, dreamy, fuzz-drenched shoegazer rock, with a slew of bands following in the wake of the pioneering Irish band My Bloody Valentine. By 1992, though, both musical movements were pretty much dead. The Stone Roses' epochal 1989 self-titled debut album set the UK alight and even made waves on American college radio. In 1990, the band played an era-defining outdoor show to nearly 30,000 people at Spike Island, an artificial island in Widnes to the northwest of England. However, internal strife within the band, combined with a fierce dispute between the band and their record label, meant that it would be 4 years before the Roses would release another album, which was an entirety in pop music back then. Their momentum was derailed, and it essentially killed the band as a major force. The Happy Mondays' funky dance rock, along with their indelible and charismatic frontman and their leader, Sean Ryder, they were the other dominant and influential band and sound coming out of Manchester. Their 1990 album, Pills, Thrills, and Bellyaches, was a monster hit that made them an arena rock band in the UK. It even got them considerable airplay on MTV and some on US rock radio. However, drug addiction among several members, as well as out of control egos, led to creative stagnancy, which meant by the time of 1992's Yes Please, they were a creatively spent force that had lost their fans as well as critical support. They broke up soon afterward. Of course, the Manchester indie dance rock craze, dubbed Madchester at the time, inspired a whole bunch of bands throughout the UK to capitalize on the style, most notably Scotland's Primal Scream, who evolved from a lo-fi sounding, jangly guitar band to one that embraced electronic dance music forms such as techno and house for their 1991 classic Screamadelica. And of course, you had one-hit wonders Jesus Jones and EMF.
Yep.
Jesus Jones hit big in 1990 with the worldwide smash Right Here, Right Now, while EMF did the same in 1991 with You're Unbelievable. Y'all remember that one.
Yep.
Yet, these were one-offs, and with the Mondays having fallen apart and the Roses in creative and legal limbo, Madchester and all the bands they inspired were done by 1992. Shoegazer rock, which started toward the end of the 1980s as a melodic, dreamy, yet very loud and fuzzy form of psychedelia, was essentially kick-started by the Irish band My Bloody Valentine with their 1988 EP, You Made Me Realize, and their LP of that same year, Isn't Anything. They emerged in the middle of the decade as a noisy, punkish band heavily indebted to the Jesus and Mary chain before changing gears and evolving into the band that made those aforementioned classics. They started a movement of like-minded yet vastly inferior, if not outright mediocre, bands throughout the UK such as Curve, Slowdive, Ride, and Swerve Driver, all of whom received varying degrees of critical and commercial acclaim. When in 1991, My Bloody Valentine released their masterpiece, Loveless, both a commercial and critically massive success, they took that subgenre or style so far into the stratosphere that nothing more could be done with it. Any band or artist influenced or impacted by that album had no hope of matching it, much less surpassing it. The band that kickstarted the shoegaze movement effectively ended it as well. In addition to a vacuum created by the demise of indie dance rock and shoegazer, there was something else developing on a cultural level that helped usher in the Britpop era. At the beginning of the 1990s, a new youth generation was coming of age, one that had become tired of American cultural imperialism. When I say that, I mean more than just American pop, rock, and dance music more than just American rock. Pop and dance music that was dominating the British charts at the time was also American. This is also in reference to American movies, American TV shows, and even American video games that had been flooding consumer media markets at the time. The new British youth culture that was developing in this post-Thatcher era was hungry for something different, something that was uniquely and distinctly English or Scottish or Welsh that spoke to them and their experiences, something that wasn't shoving American style anything up their noses. In music, and particularly in rock, you started to see this dynamic in a crop of new emerging London and London area bands that shared this ideology with the new generation of music fans. When Blur released their debut album Leisure in 1991, they were a band still looking for an identity that masked the supposed shortcoming with deliciously catchy songs that traversed the different styles and subgenres popular in British indie rock at the time, especially shoegazer, with the single She's So High, and Manchester-style dance rock with the UK top 10 hit There's No Other Way. But give credit where credit is due to Damon Albarn, Graham Coxon, and company. They knew that following the path of their first record was a dead end. They read where the British tea leaves were blowing culturally and musically, and very quickly they did an about-face with their musical direction, adapting the uniquely English sounds of XTC and the Kinks for a new generation with a newly focused English-centric lyrical mindset that explored Ray Davies-esque character studies and clever social commentary. Suede embraced an artsy, androgynous look that perfectly complemented their 1990s update on glam era David Bowie. For a brief couple of years, the critical hype surrounding Suede was massive, helping bring national and eventually international attention to the Britpop scene. Their commercial success early on was the equal of Blur's early period at the time. Suede guitarist Justine Frischmann was also lead singer Brett Anderson's girlfriend, but she left that band in 1991 to form and front Elastica, one of the greatest and most underrated of the entire Britpop era, one that traded in punky pop rock that owed a debt to late 1970s British bands such as Wire and the Buzzcocks. Pulp evolved from their 1980s roots in synthpop to more of a guitar-oriented band with sleeker, more tightly structured songs and, like with Blur, lyrics that explored character sketches and astute social commentary. However, lead singer and main songwriter Jarvis Cocker imbued his songs and words with a quintessentially English, dorky yet perverted persona that colored and flavored so many of Pulp's best and most memorable songs. What these bands did in 1992 through 93 was ignite the Britpop movement that launched a gigantic wave of new bands that helped transform the British music landscape, as well as redefine how the rest of the world viewed British rock. Even bands/artists that weren't necessarily Britpop in their sound and style, such as Radiohead, PJ Harvey, and The Verve, got swept up in the same banner by both critics and fans as part of the backlash against American music and pop culture. Throughout the duration of this miniseries, we're going to refer to these bands and artists as, quote, Britpop adjacent. You're going to hear that word a lot in this series. And let's be honest, if you create a Spotify or Apple Music or YouTube Plus playlist of British rock of the 1990s, songs by Radiohead, PJ Harvey, and The Verve really wouldn't sound out of place alongside all those other Britpop bands we mentioned, or the ones we will mention. And of course, there was the eventual emergence of a rambunctious, outspoken five-piece band with loud guitars from Manchester who not only defined the Britpop movement for the rest of the world, but practically overwhelmed it. But we'll start talking about those guys in the next episode.
Yep.
So, before we delve into the defining singles and albums of this early period of the Britpop era, what are your thoughts on Britpop's origins, Chris? Besides Fuck America.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck America. No, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, but basically what happened was, and I think that it was compounded by the rise of grunge in late '91.
Sure.
That all these scenes fading away, and then grunge becomes this big export. That what you had was this big smoking hole of a dearth of influence, and things were rather directionless with all these scenes that were faltering, and so. What happened was let's all take a trip back to the late 1960s and embracing the Kinks and the Who and the Small Faces and some of those groups and so that's kind of where it started. You have this anti-American vibe, but also this desire to be more pro-British and to have something uniquely British because again, you had that period where everything kind of fell apart. And so how do you fill the hole? You want to fill it with something British because you at that point you cannot stand America. And so this is where it comes in and credit to Blur and to Suede and to those groups for coming up with this with that sound. And even Jarvis Cocker, who I'm not usually a fan of, even early on, they were pretty clever in how they combining like 60s style guitar rock with music hall and other sort of very British influences to just sort of jangle and pop their way into success.
Right.
And then and then you talk about Britpop adjacency, and you need to do that because what you ended up with is you had this rush of bands. Like you mentioned you mentioned some of them: Radiohead, PJ Harvey, The Verve, all of whom we'll cover later in the episode. But they all came in to fill the hole. And they were all vital because in one way or another, they all were, had a certain level of Britishness to them and, really just kind of ended up defining the decade. So
Right.
yeah, good stuff. So let's get to the singles.
Oh yeah, let's start. We're gonna do this is gonna cover span the years 1992 and 93. Here we go. We're gonna do the singles, lightning round singles of Britpop and Britpop adjacent, and then four key albums of 1993 Britpop and Britpop adjacent artists. All right, let's start with the singles. Lightning round begins now. Ned's Atomic Dustbin, Not Sleeping Around from 1992. This band was a UK indie rock institution in the 1990s, and this track, which oozes with Manchester dance rock, is one of their biggest hits in the UK. They're generally known for their more direct punk-flavored style, but this track rocks along like the Stone Roses on amphetamines. Chris?
Yeah, one thing that we'll say up front is that a lot of these songs are indebted to four bands: Joy Division, the Psychedelic Furs, Echo and the Bunnymen, and the Stone Roses. And there's the influence of those bands is lasting, and so this is so this Net Atomic Dustbin song, "Not Sleeping Around," is kind of like a very jammy Echo and the Bunnymen take.
Really? I hear Stone Roses a lot.
And Stone Roses. And so,
Yeah.
but it's very jammy. Like a jammy guitar. It's kind of combination Echo Stone Roses, and so. But yeah, they were a really good guitar group. They did some funky stuff, or they did some really cool, almost psychedelic kind of stuff.
Yeah. All right. Next, Curve with Fate Accompli. Now, that's Latin for all you folks out there from 1992. A band that was among the many from the UK post My Bloody Valentine shoegazer factory bands of the late 80s, early 90s. This song finds Curve delving into sultry, sexy, electro-tinged rock with those oh-so shoegazer guitars drifting in the background, with singer Tony Halliday singing with unusual sexual menace. This may actually be their best single. Chris?
Yeah, it's very icily sexy beat and a lot
Yeah.
of sex appeal. Tony Halliday was a good-looking woman, and she had a very sexy voice. And with the sort of the electronicized backdrop to this song, yeah, probably the sexiest song on this whole list. And I think it served them well. It's too bad, they could have made a career based on this template, but
Yeah.
alas, they didn't.
Yeah, well, it was a hit, but not a big enough hit. All right, the next one was a hit. The Cranberries with Dreams from 1992. No, the Cranberries were not English, they were from Ireland. And while they weren't necessarily Britpop, their jangly guitar sound and soaring melodies are very, very influenced by the Smiths, who are a huge touchstone band for Britpop in general. So this makes them, as I talked about earlier, Britpop adjacent. This is their first hit, the one that put them on the map and opened the door for even greater success later on. It's an exquisite pop rock single full of the kind of authentic romantic yearning that they would perfect with later songs. Chris?
Yeah, this is on the soundtrack to every "Hey, remember the '90s" compilation.
Close my eyes.
Yep, quintessential early '90s rock single. Classic vocal take from Dolores Riordan and her Irish lilt.
Yeah.
She just had that really kind of cool, sexy voice. And what Winger and Warrant were to prom soundtracks in 1989, this song was to prom soundtracks in '93. Remember, it first hit in '92, but it was on the album "Everybody's Doing It, So Why Don't We," which broke big in the fall of '93. It actually started. It kind of went mainstream when you and I were starting college.
Exactly.
Back, a million years ago. But it was only 1993. In the grand scheme of things, 32 years in the history of the world is not that bad. So, but basically, if you think about it, grunge, what it was in general was a great enema to
Yes.
get rid of all the shit that
Yeah.
existed in 89, 90, 91. And
Yeah.
in came meaningful tunefulness or tunefully meaningful songs. And this was indicative of that trend back to that. Without grunge, the Cranberries probably don't even get their chance to go on the stage because they were something different and something cool and something meaningful.
Right. Next, Wonky Alice with Caterpillars from 1992, with that slinky bass line and snappy guitar riff leading to that beautifully arpeggiated lead. This is one of the legions of Smith's wannabe bands the UK produced that actually had a little something to them. They only lasted for one album, but this is one of those perfect Britpop singles that should have been a hit. Chris?
Yeah, very Smitsy. Well, you're right about that bass line. That bass line is kick ass. Both bass lines, the opening bass line, which is very reggae based, and then into the main bass line and into kind of the main riff. It's Smitsy, but also echoing the Bunnymen as well. And so,
Yeah.
very very mid '80s reverent. And yeah, they were a good band. Kind of a lost Manchester band.
Yeah, really. Next, Robinson with Soup from 1992. While Wonky Alice could only last one album, Robinson could only muster one EP. But like with the previous band, it's unthinkable that this track wasn't a hit, with its well-crafted verse leading to its bombastic sing-along chorus. If the Laws ever had more in them than There She Goes, it would have been this track. Chris?
Yeah, this here's another Manchester group. Great female vocal and another '80s throwback. At this point, notice the theme. In 1992, it might as well still be 1986. That's kind of the vibe that we got here on the early part of this list. But yeah, definitely ultra melodic on the chorus, really quirky song, and a weird bridge with these strings and keys that kind of come out of nowhere. So definitely a cool song, and too bad they couldn't get it together to last more than one EP.
Yeah, too bad. Next, the Soup Dragons with Divine Thing from 1992. Now, this Scottish band actually had commercial success. Their 1990 single I'm Free, the cover of the Stones song, hit number 5 in the UK chart. But this is, I think, the much better song. And it actually hit the top 40 of the US Billboard pop chart. They followed Jesus Jones and EMF a little too late in the indie dance rock factory line. But a close listen reveals that this band really hit the sweet spot as being the midpoint between that latter style and the sublime, uber catchy pop rock that would come to define the whole Britpop movement. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. This song, very, very Rolling Stonesy.
Yeah.
Killer lift, riff, and delicious groove. Very campy British vocal. From the lead singer here. Wouldn't have been at a place on Emotional Rescue or Under Cover of the Night. It has that kind of vibe to it, and which makes sense because they're famous for that cover of "I'm Free,"
Right.
which again was cool. But this is the much better song. Love it. It's probably my favorite song on this whole list.
Yeah. Next, Blur with Pop Scene from 1992. Released in early 1992, this is the song where Blur stopped worrying about which musical trend to follow and decided to just be themselves. And that is unashamedly English as possible. With its relentless rhythmic drive, Graham Coxon's wall of sound guitar, stabbing horn section, and Damon Albarn's biting, sarcastic lyrical take on night clubbing, their creative doors were blown open and their musical template for the next few years was set. Although it peaked at only number 32 on the UK chart, this is effectively the song that kicked off the Britpop style as we know it. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it didn't really hint at what was to come on Modern Life is Rubbish, which we'll cover later in the episode. This owes more to New Wave than it does to the Kinks or the Who. Really, but it's kind of it's an up-tempo groover, and it's a bouncy number, and like you said, it has a lot of those attributes. Really high energy. Really really cool, really sardonic, and again, it didn't really hint at the kind of satire that in kind of acerbicness that you would get on Modern Life is Rubbish, but it's still pretty cool.
Yeah. Next, Pulp with Babies from 1992. This is the song where Pulp finally shook off the stigma of being a failed 1980s synth pop band and, by embracing guitars and tighter songwriting, latched onto a sound and style that found them surprisingly compatible with a burgeoning new movement of uniquely English rock and roll. Singer-songwriter Jarvis Cocker hadn't quite yet solidified his nerdy voyeur persona that he became known for, but his lyrical insight into relationship dynamics were already being honed. This is a lush, sexy slice of guitar pop, one that provides a peek into the sensual pop Pulp would perfect in a couple of short years. Chris?
Yeah, this might be my favorite Pulp song. I love the surf style lead guitar on
Yeah.
So it's got new wave vibes with the surf guitar on it. So that's pretty cool. And then Jarvis Cocker's vocal is actually pretty good on there, where he gets kind of speak singy,
Yeah.
and so there's an earnestness here along with that sheen that makes for a really great single.
Yeah. Next, Suede with The Drowners from 1992. Neither curmudgeon is a Suede fan, like at all. But like I'm prone to say, the sun can shine on a dog's ass every now and then. This band always reeked to me of third-rate Bowie worship, but this is one of the few songs where that Bowie worship actually works. Some great guitar work from the intro and verse leads into a beautifully flowing chorus that oozes with androgynous sexuality. One of the few times Suede's shtick is actually convincing. Chris?
Yeah, the best Britpop had a great sense of both drama and bombast. And
Yeah.
this song contains both in equal measure.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing that Radiohead would go on to do with on albums like The Bends and OK Computer, much, much better
Of course.
as far as mixing the drama and the bombast. But I do like what they Suede does here on the Drowners. Great riff. Really, really great riff, and the chorus is weird. Like the vocals are really, really strange because you get a falsetto with like a bass vocal underneath it, so it has kind of this wooziness to it that makes it kind
Yeah.
of cool.
Right. Next, speaking of woozy, The Verve and two singles, She's a Superstar and Gravity Grave, both from 1992. When The Verve started out, they were a heavy psychedelic rock band, even a bit shoegazer-esque. But ironically enough, the more they progressed and evolved, the more aligned with Britpop they actually became,
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
with their 1997 breakthrough album Urban Hymns. Here, though, you can file them alongside Radiohead as a Britpop adjacent band. She's a Superstar is a glorious gliding piece of anthemic art rock that owes a bit of a debt to Pink Floyd's In the Flesh. Gravity Grave, with its loopy bass line and echoey guitar, is primo psychedelic rock that manages to be melodic, catchy, and accessible, a trick that this band became masters at. Chris?
Yeah, both of these songs are over 8 minutes long, and so you're talking like really jammy shit. And Nick McCabe, as we'll talk about later when we talk about the Verve's album "A Storm in Heaven," Nick McCabe was the original star of this band more than Richard Ashcroft.
Yeah, yeah,
Starting with the Northern Soul in 1995, Ashcroft became the star, but McCabe was kind of
yeah,
almost guitar god level at this
yeah.
point with the psychedelic soup that he could serve up. So
Right.
yeah, both great jam outs. Hey, 18 minutes worth of singles. Gotta love it.
Next, Bandit Queen with Dirt and Soul from 1993. Now we enter the feminist wing of early Britpop. Bandit Queen never got above releasing a few singles and one album, but this track encapsulates everything that was good about this Manchester band. Punchy guitar riffs, punk attitude, and spiky choruses that stick in your head. It's too bad they couldn't get enough commercial or critical support. Chris?
Yeah, this is just down and dirty rock and roll, like something you'd expect from Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. You expect claps and yeahs to
Yeah.
come in here with this band. And here's a nugget from their Wikipedia bio that makes me love this band. It says the band were signed to Playtime Records, who issued all of their releases, with their second EP and debut album also issued in the U.S. by Mammoth Records, although the latter had one track removed from the U.S. release. The band speculating that this may have been due to it having the word cunt in it 32 times. Yeah,
Awesome.
that might get them a little bit blackballed. But hey, love it.
Yeah. Next, Huggy Bear with Her Jazz from 1993, another band that was Britpop adjacent and whose members actually partied with artists in the Britpop sphere back in the early to mid 1990s. This band actually had a following in the London scene in the early part of the decade, managing to put out a split mini album with American feminist punk band Bikini Kill in 1993. This standalone single, though, is a raucous, riff-heavy monster of righteous girl power fury with a sing-along call for revolution to boot. In our curmudgeonly parallel universe, they would have taken the place of the Spice Girls. Chris?
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, you're talking like real throwback mid 60s garage rock vibe here. And Riot Girl had a British division, and
Yeah.
Huggy Bear manned it, and they
Yeah.
manned it really, really well. This is
Or they womaned it.
they womaned it. Yeah, this is more down and dirty femme rock. Love it.
Yeah. Next, Elastica with Stutter from 1993. When Justine Frischmann left Suede to form her own band, it was seen by many as a bad career move since Suede were just about to take off commercially. Little did they know that the band Frischmann put together as singer, songwriter, guitarist would end up being one of the most critically adored and arguably one of the three best bands from the whole Britpop movement. Commercial success would follow very soon, but their debut single Stutter is a 2.5 minute adrenaline blast of sleek, sexy pop rock perfection. It's lyrically sly, witty, and coy all at once while being note perfect in its construction and execution. It's amazing how just coming out of the gate, Elastica already blew Suede and Pulp out of the water.
Yeah, no
Chris?
shit. Yeah, more femme rock. So this
Yeah.
is 2 minutes and 22 seconds of lo-fi fuzzed out, out just perfect pop.
Yeah.
Just a great, really great pop structure. Really charismatic lead vocal by Justine Frischmann. This is my second favorite song on this lightning round list. Just a really great rock anthem. Almost you could almost stick oi oi ois in there and it would have worked.
Yeah, totally. Next, Lush with Tinkerbell in 1993. Lush started out in the late 1980s as a shoegazer dream pop band, but as the early 1990s came around and what became known as Britpop started to become a thing, their sound evolved into that of a more accessible, catchy guitar pop band that leaned more to the twee pop side of things. While the lyrics angrily excoriate women who use sexuality to mask their insecurity, those lyrics, they're couched in breezy folk rock with a beautiful guitar lead and a dancing flute. Chris?
Yeah, gotta love the flute rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, this song has a really nice bounce to it. Even more femme rock. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's four femme rock songs in a row. And but the flute really it's just a really catchy, quirky, poppy song with a really cool vocal harmony involved in it too.
Next, James with Laid from 1993. James emerged from Manchester in the early 1980s, but they didn't hit big on the UK charts until 1991 when the one-two punch of Sit Down and Sound both hit the top 10. This song, one of their most famous and their only hit in the US, is an irresistible nugget of classic British acoustic pop rock. It's endured quite well too, having been used in the American Pie film series as well as in an episode of the FX streaming series The Bear. Chris?
Yeah, this song was all over MTV early in our freshman year at Syracuse University.
Yeah, it was a big
It was
hit.
practically, practically ubiquitous, but it's a funny ass lyric about a sex obsessed girlfriend, and I can still hear it in my head. But she only comes when she's on top, you know. So it's kind of a campy, dramatically campy song,
Yeah.
but really well done and catchy as hell and good stuff.
Next, The Cranberries with Linger, 1993. Back to the Britpop adjacent bands. This is the song that launched the Cranberries into international success. With its sweeping string arrangement, its lilting rhythm that seems to float on air, and Dolores O'Riordan's enchanting vocals leading to that passionate, spellbinding chorus, this song was inescapable in its time. And it certainly was when we were freshmen at Syracuse University in
Yeah.
1993, and is one of the all-time great pop singles of the decade. Chris?
Yeah, completely inescapable. And another one of those, hey, this is the 90s compilation songs. Just really pretty, really lush, more dreamy than the song Dreams. It's got that acoustic guitar with that heavy dollop of strings and just
Yeah.
just beautiful. And I tell you, it was hey, I'll admit, I didn't get laid when I was a freshman in college, but if I had, it might have been to this song. Yeah.
Next, Pulp with Lip Gloss in 1993. The Britpop waters were starting to boil in 1993 as this was Pulp's first hit single and the one that convinced them not to break up. The heartbreaking tale of a young woman being luckless in love in a Sheffield council estate. That's low income housing in American for some of you out there. Jarvis Cocker elevates it to something tragic and heroic with his empathy for the character. The fuzzy guitar work and keyboard flourishes blend into a tasty backdrop for an exquisite Britpop classic. Chris?
Yeah, slicker and rockier than Babies. Really strong pop song. High energy, bearably strained performance from Cocker. It's really upbeat and unironic in the way that
Yeah,
it tells its tale.
right.
And obviously this band would be kind of the champions of irony later on in the decade when they did Common People and stuff like that. But this is them playing it straight, which means they were playing it well.
Right. Next and finally, Suede with Animal Nitrate, 1993. This is the second time that the sun shone on Suede's dog's ass, and this one is a doozy. Even people who don't like Suede have to admit that this is one of the defining Britpop singles of all time, and indeed one of the best rock singles of the decade. Suede's greatest moment is introduced by Bernard Butler's stinging guitar intro and glides into an anthemic chorus melody that defies anyone to care about what the lyrics are about. Chris?
Yeah, who cares what the lyrics are about? This is a really catchy song, more sensual blast off from the
Yeah.
song. It's bombastic and wild and woolly. It's a good old fashioned sex romp of a song, and just like I said, just really really catchy. And again, this the second time that the song the sun's sewn on the dog's ass, and probably Suede's best song. And again, Britpop template all over it. It's poppy, it's throwback, it rocks, and it has swagger.
On this episode, we kicked off our 1990s Britpop timeline series by delving into the great and essential singles and albums of Britpop's early years. For the next episode, we're diving into the year Britpop exploded, 1994. Elastica, Pulp, and Supergrass continue to tickle the fancies of British ears, as well as the ears of hip music fans all over the world, with some astounding singles. Britpop adjacent groups like Primal Scream, the Stone Roses, and even the Cranberries put out some outstanding singles as well. But most importantly, 1994 saw the release of two totemic, titanic, colossal albums that changed the entire British rock landscape. Blur's Parklife and Oasis's Definitely Maybe. These albums mattered then and still do now, and we'll get into all those reasons why on the next episode. So join us next time as the Curmudgeon Rock Report brings you a Britpop Timeline Part 2. Now we begin a rundown of four seminal Britpop and Britpop adjacent albums
Well,
of
five.
19... Well, five albums, right? Four artists, five albums. The run from 1992 to 93. And the first one is probably the really stretching it and calling it Britpop adjacent. But she needs to be put in there because as far as British rock artists of the 1990s goes, she is in like she is like in a class of her own, and she is one of the greatest of all time, period. And
Yeah.
we're talking about the one, the only, the legendary, the genius, PJ Harvey. Chris?
Yeah, she's definitely in the top three in terms of British artists in the 90s. She's up there with Radiohead and Oasis, as far as influence, as far as discography, as far as just
Right.
everything. PJ Harvey, Paula Jean Harvey, she was awesome. And she did two albums in a row, her first two records out of the gate when she's in her early 20s, Dry and Rid of Me, both very good, especially Rid of Me. So let's talk about these records. Paula Jean Harvey came on in the early 90s like a force of nature. Actually, it was more like a charge of highly sexualized, frustrated feminine energy. Harvey, a native of Dorset, England, established herself as one of the greatest female rockers of her generation with the colossal one-two punch of her debut album Dry in 92, followed by the awesome Rid of Me in 93. Harvey recorded both albums as part of an established trio, along with drummer Rob Ellis and bassist Steve Vaughan. The trio dissolved in 1993, and Harvey then proceeded as a solo artist. But the music that these three folks made on these two albums was damn near revolutionary, serving up a raw, tough, bluesy, punky sound driven especially by the power of Harvey's primal guitar playing. This was Britpop only in the sense of the songwriting, which was tight, focused, and on mission, but otherwise this was among the heaviest, crunchiest, most searing music of the era. PJ Harvey announced their arrival in 1992 with Dry. This debut album established Paula Jean Harvey immediately as an erstwhile conveyor of tattered female psyche. She takes on the persona of a possessive mythic creature with an oversized vulva on the thunderous Sheila Nagig. She puts her libido on full display on Dress, a rumbling blues number on which Harvey lustfully longs for a man's attention. She then plays the role of biblical antihero on Hair, another scorched earth guitar rocker in which he takes on the voice of Delilah, reveling in her conquest of the falling hairless Samson. The band is at its tightest and most incendiary here on Victory, which is propelled by a groovy Vaughan bassline and a kick-ass riff and yelping vocals from Harvey. Dry was a fantastic introduction to a young woman with a lot to say and a band that could make a hell of a noise in helping her do so. But it was a mere opening act compared to what came next in 1993. Simply, Rid of Me is one of the best albums of the 1990s, a blazing hot, rawly and viscerally sexualized accomplishment. Harvey and bandmates traveled to Minnesota to record the album with Steve Albini, the big black guitarist who had made a name for himself producing the Pixies and who would produce Nirvana's In Utero later the same year. Albini had a gift for capturing and then harnessing the power of a recording session, applying little to no sheen to what he recorded. The raw, loud as fuck treatment served PJ Harvey's material well here. Harvey wrote and recorded the album on the heels of a painful breakup, and her desperation and rage, but also a sense of sexual liberation, permeate these songs powerfully. For example, there's the banging title track, on which Harvey literally ties herself to her would-be ex, begging him to lick her legs and perform other acts until he's truly sorry he met her. On the super heavy Legs, Harvey fantasizes about cutting the legs off a lover who scorned her. Elsewhere, Harvey allows her id to roam unhinged and grow enormous in bashing out the tremendously confident and sexy as hell 50-foot Queenie in Man Size, the latter being the best song about a guy's pride and his member ever written by a woman. There's also Rub Till It Bleeds, a blues basher all about rough acts of mutual masturbation. In the context of all this abrasiveness, a gnarled, furiously pounded out cover of Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited made total sense. Harvey is at her bluntest near the end of the record when she compares a shriveling relationship to her, lack of lubrication down there on the song Dry, and when she takes on the manlier than thou myth of Tarzan on Me Jane, and when she sexualizes and makes a phallic allusion to the story of Adam and Eve on Snake, guess where the snake ends up on there? Over the course of Dry and Rid of Me, Polly Jean Harvey emerged as something of a rock and roll hero, flipping as she did the script on notions of male domination and female submissiveness. She was instantly a singular artist with a singular and wholly original voice. These albums have held up over the years and continue to grow in stature. They might be only Britpop adjacent, but they've proven to have more staying power than most of the records made around the same time. Right, Arturo?
Yeah, totally agree. What for me, what makes these two PJ Harvey albums Britpop adjacent is that you have the primal blues punk fury that you have in these records, but it's also how concise, tight, and catchy and melodic these songs are.
Oh, yeah.
Without all like the rock and roll noise and bell and whistles. If you put PJ Harvey with an acoustic guitar, these could be folk pop songs, although
Yeah.
very angry folk pop songs. But still, they'd be very melodic, they'd be very catchy, and you can make pop songs out of this material. But PJ Harvey doesn't do that because she's a badass rock and roller. She wants to rock, and God bless her for it. And that's why she made these records. Rid of Me, I still think, you know what? Screw it. I think Rid of Me is her best album. And it's one of the 500 greatest albums of all time. I have it in my list, I have it quite high. And it's one of the defining albums of the decade by one of the defining artists of the decade, male, female, transgender, or otherwise.
Yeah, I still put it a tad below To Bring You My Love.
Okay.
Well, both of those albums are sensational. I mean, Rid of Me, just the sexual power of that record.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just to kind of the Take Back the Night
Yeah.
vibe of it. I mean, like Legs is like literally just kind of fucked up. It's all about her fantasizing about cutting the legs off of an ex-lover.
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
literally like sawing off the legs of an ex-lover. I'm like, dang, girl.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
she needed to go for a walk.
well, making these albums was her therapy for sure.
Yep.
All right. The next seminal album, The Verve, A Storm in Heaven from 1993. After the critical success of the Verve EP in 1992, British music media hype was substantial in anticipation of the band's full-length debut album. Some people peg them as a shoegazer band, but this wasn't entirely accurate. Yes, they utilized swirling psychedelic guitar sounds, but there was a grit and a backbone to their overall sound and songs that manifested in crunchy riffs and heavy rhythms that grounded their music in a hard rock style rather than the ethereal mush of many other shoegazer bands. If their song constructions were fluid in the sense that they came in and out of focus, what always lingered were the beautiful hooks and melodies supplied either by their brilliant guitarist Nick McCabe or lead singer Richard Ashcroft. Speaking of Ashcroft, as a performer, he had a riveting, intense shamanistic quality to him that put him in line more with the likes of Jim Morrison or Ian Curtis than any of the fey, twee, navel-gazing wimps, both male and
Yeah.
female, that passed for shoegaze band lead singers. Coming from Wigan, a suburb of Manchester, it wouldn't have been far off to call them Oasis's darker, heavier, more brooding older brothers. The singles Blue and Slide Away point to the band's truly original blend of melodic majesty, hypnotic groove, and psychedelic heaviness. The sun, the sea is, as the title implies, a cascading ocean of wall-to-wall guitars and layered saxophone. Already there is a sashaying, alternating soundscape of McCabe's crushing riffage and ambient washes. It is a bewitching and beguiling record of trance-like proportions, most definitely a weed and headphones experience. That, if you listen carefully enough, you can actually the record itself points the way to more of the clarity and refined songcraft that lay ahead. Chris?
Yeah. This song definitely green tests very well from what I remember.
You mean the album?
Yeah, the album. Yeah, it definitely green tests very, very well. And good stuff. Nick McCabe is the star here. like he was on the singles. He's the star here. Like some of the guitar stuff on here is just epic. It's trancy, it's hypnotic, it's
Yeah.
totally engrossing. It engulfs the songs and it's just this loud, buzzy, just wacky, but controlled. That's the thing. It's wacky but controlled, and
Mm.
just beautifully jagged guitar beds that he puts forward consistently on this record. I'm a big fan of the Sun to Sea because
Yeah.
that's like a very psychedelic, very British take on the Stooges' Funhouse record.
Yeah.
You get those songs on there with the saxophone solos, so that's why I'm a big fan of that. I'm also a big fan of Blue, and again, like you said, that song kind of hints at the kind of the more melodic,
Mm.
more sort of Ashcroft starring songs that came
Right.
later on a Northern Soul in '95 and Urban Hymns in 1997. So yeah, really strong first effort, and just a really unique blend of kind of I guess you could call it like late period, almost dead shoegaze.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the last gasp of shoegaze and the first wave of like psychedelic Britpop.
Yeah.
It's like the end of one thing and the beginning of another is
Yeah.
what this album represents.
All right. Well, speaking of the beginning of a legendary career, up next.
Yeah, Radiohead's Honey. We have to cover Pablo Honey, and here's why. Before Radiohead was the mighty Radiohead, maker of classic genre-bending prog rock and pseudo-techno masterpieces, they seemed destined to be a one-hit wonder band. Pablo Honey from 1993 is the album that houses that would-be one hit, that highly sensual but deeply troubled anthem for frustrated stalkers with low self-esteem everywhere, Creep. You know it. Everybody knows it. On Creep, Tom York shows off his otherworldly vocal range while guitarist Johnny Greenwood introduces his clean, lovely guitar lines and burning hot riffage. The song showed a gift for mixing undeniably pretty with compellingly weird that the band, of course, would heighten and perfect on later albums, but here we get it in the context of a hell of a good sing-along melodic pop rocker. Creep, of course, is by far the best song on Pablo Honey. The rest of the album is a study in ambition with chops that aren't quite ready to match. It all sounds big and grand and bombastic and rocked out. There was definitely a band with a vision here, even if they didn't quite have the songwriting to match. Even so, Johnny Greenwood and Ed O'Brien's screeching guitar swirls and York's sense of drama as a singer were at least highly developed and readily apparent at this point. The album does have other high points beyond Creep. There's Stop Whispering, which is a jangly mid-tempo number that wouldn't have sounded out of place on college rock radio of the era. Thinking About You is high on drama as York yelps romantically alongside rousing and folksy acoustic guitar. Ripcord is a ripping little pop rocker that shows a Bryan Adams-like sense for radio-ready harmony vocal theater, and Vegetable features a pretty melody and engaging lead lines from Greenwood. In retrospect, Pablo Honey was the first volley from an unpolished diamond of a band. It was a band that obviously would keep growing and reaching for greater heights and finding untapped notes and sounds and ultimately proving to be endlessly inventive and exciting. But this is at least where it started, on a one-hit wonder-like note filled with engaging near misses. Lots of people back then wildly underestimated Radiohead, including yours truly, after the breakout of Creep, and it turned out we all did so at our peril. Arturo?
Yeah, I did too. I put it this way. I agree with you that this song, with this album, they had their sound and they had a great sound, but they didn't quite have the songs yet. Where I disagree is with the song Creep. I've never liked that song. I've always thought that song kind of sucked. I always thought it sounded like a shitty Scott Walker ripoff, just with loud guitars. I think much better are the tracks Anyone Can Play Guitar, where they reference the Doors in kind of a mocking way. And
Hmm.
I think the best song on the album, the Stop Whispering, that has that beautiful build that it builds and builds and it goes down and it builds again and it goes up and down. It's just this
Yeah.
beautiful glide to that song. I think it's by far the best song on the album. But yeah, they had their sound. They had the great voice and the persona of the frontman and Tom York. They were lacking in songs, but they would bring that up big time with their next album, and they would become more original later on.
Yeah. No,
Much
absolutely.
more innovative, but that comes in two more episodes from this one.
Yeah, yeah. Their growth as a band from here was stunning. I don't think anybody could have foreseen that they would come out with the Bends and then OK Computer just
Yeah,
based on how they started.
yeah,
It just really stunning growth, especially from Johnny Greenwood. I mean,
yeah,
his ability as a guitarist and all of a sudden tuning, he's tuning in Miles Davis into his
yeah.
guitar
Yeah.
vocabulary. It's pretty astonishing.
Yeah, like I said, they are Britpop adjacent. Technically, they were not a Britpop band, but they were part of the British rock revival of the 1990s that included Britpop,
Yep.
and that makes them. And plus, they had Creep was a worldwide top 40 hit. It was
Yep.
accessible. It was catchy. It might as well be a Britpop song, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of, might as well be Britpop songs. Let's get to one of the shining exemplars of Britpop, if there ever
Yeah.
was one.
Yeah, the last album on this little rundown, Blur, with their second album overall, Modern Life is Rubbish from 1993. If Blur's single from 1992, Pop Scene, is the song that in effect launched Britpop as we know it, then this is what did it in album form. The artistic and stylistic leap from their debut album, Leisure, to this record in just 2 years is startling. The songs are sharper, crisper, catchier, punchier, more focused, and more grounded in the exquisite tradition of 1960s and 70s British rock. You have the melodic sing alongs and lyrical character studies with biting social commentary of the Kinks. You have the angular quirkiness and manic restlessness of early XTC. You have the coiled power pop of the Buzzcocks. If lead singer Damon Albarn's songwriting had improved and matured by leaps and bounds, then the band's whole sound was held together and kept current as of 1993, by the brilliant and abrasive guitar work of Graham Coxon, Blur's forever secret weapon, or not so secret weapon. It had been a long time since a British band that sounded this distinctly English, this proudly English, this endearingly English. And I'm not talking about Albarn's more pronounced Cockney accent in his vocals, but a band that this English really came onto the scene and made an impact. Ray Davies would have killed for his later career to feature a song full of such sadness and hope as For Tomorrow. The incredible band interplay on Colin Zeal finds Blur to be one of the few bands who could find the sweet spot between post-punk and pure pop rock. Advert isn't shy about suggesting the band's punk roots, while the soaring Turn It Up puts a little sunshine into their past dabbling in shoegazer. The futility of 9 to 5 day jobs, the mind numbing and soul crushing effects of mass consumerism, the tedium of everyday family life, especially if your family is full of unlikable characters, the understanding need to drown your pain and sorrow in endless pints of ale at a nearby pub. Blur paint a stark picture of English life at the beginning of the immediate post-Thatcher 1990s. But to paraphrase John Lydon in Julian Temple's 1998 Sex Pistols documentary, The Filth and the Fury, when you're hypercritical about so many aspects of your country, you don't do it out of hatred. You do it from a place of love because you want your country to be better. On Modern Life is Rubbish, Blur unleash a sharply barbed love letter to their country, and in doing so, kick off a musical and eventually pop cultural revolution that would reshape British music for the next decade. Chris?
Yeah, and with songs like Chemical World and Sunday Sunday, there's actually kind of a hopefulness
Yeah,
that seeps into the record.
sure.
It's not it's acerbic but hopeful. And
Yeah.
I saw one line in my research on this. It said it's kind of like, an update on the Village Green Preservation Society by the
Yes.
Kinks, but
Yeah.
instead of a lovely English village, the village has been razed and replaced by a parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
so so there's even more to be angst ridden about
Right.
that, where Britain is. It's like it's becoming, kind of that gentrification that was happening in America was also happening in Britain at the same time. And
Yeah.
so, like, Modern Life is Rubbish is just like a perfect title for what was going on. But a lot of great songs on this record. I love Advert. That's a really cool little song. Chemical World is great. Again, Sunday, probably my favorite song on it. It's like amped up music hall.
Right.
Pressure on Julian is a great song for Tomorrow. So you just a lot of really good stuff. And I would say it's not the quintessential Britpop record, but it's one of the top two or three.
Yeah.
It's not
Well,
What's the
yeah.
Story, Morning Glory, but
Yeah.
it's right up there, and it really holds up. And I don't necessarily think it's their best record. I think their best record is
No, it's
probably
not.
Park Life.
Or
But
for me, it's Park Life and the self-titled album.
yeah, yeah, the self-titled record's pretty good, but Park Life is right there. But I would put Modern Life and Service right behind Park Life,
Yeah.
and just really really strong stuff. And it really kind of kicked off the Britpop era in earnest.
Yeah, it did.
Like I said, it announced Britpop's arrival as a real
Right.
thing.
Right.
It wasn't just remixed Manchester.
Yeah.
It wasn't remixed shoegazer. It was its own standalone thing. It was
Right.
it was this throwback Kinksian thing with modern sensibilities, and
Mm.
weren't we all the better for it? Starting in 1993.
All right, so that is it for part one of our Britpop timeline. Next episode, we're going to focus on 1994, as you all heard in my promo for the next episode. I don't need to say any more, but it's going to be a fun one with, with those two titanic albums towering over everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Done by two bands that didn't like each other.
But that hatred will come much later on, though. At this point, they
Yeah.
still kind of liked each other.
And with that, as we always do at the end of these episodes, folks, we encourage you to join our fabulous curmudgeonly community on Facebook, where Art keeps us posted in all kinds of cool YouTube videos, and we get lots of participation from folks like Jeff Baker and the Facebook page Music We Love, and several other folks. It's pretty vibrant in its own way up there. We'd like to make it less private. It's invite only, but we'd like to get to the point where it's not. Hopefully we won't have to like completely reboot the thing. But in the meantime, you can still join us. We'll let you in, most likely. Go to facebook.com/group/curmudgeonrock. If you have anything to say about this record, if you want to send us fan mail about how we're totally awesome or about how we totally suck at podcasting, even after 113 episodes, by the way, fuck you if you think that. You can write us at curmudgeonrock@gmail.com. And we'll also have a special Spotify playlist with a cross-section of all these songs and all these albums and all these tunes. Again, the list is made. It's about 4 hours long, and lots of merriment to be had there. And you can access that through our episode description on wherever you're accessing this podcast, whether it's Apple or Stitcher or Amazon or any other platform. Go to the episode description and you'll find the link in our description. So dig it.